We are live. Good evening and welcome everybody to the Roy Chapman Andrews Society Distinguished Explorer Award presentation for this year with this year's honoree, Dr. Sarah Parcak, space archaeologist, who will be with us here tonight and to whom we will present our annual Distinguished Explorer Award. We hope you enjoyed our little tribute to all the good sponsors and supporters and the other little interesting details that we had in our little pre-roll there. Thanks for logging in early and checking all that out. My name is Greg Gerard. I guess it says it right there, Executive Director of the Beloit International Film Festival. And I'm so glad that Ruth Carlson and the board of Roy Chapman Andrews reached out and asked if the film festival would partner with them on this event. It's been a pleasure, and I think we've got some really interesting things to share with you tonight, not the least of which is a wonderful lecture by Dr. Parcak, and the lecture is called Towards an Inclusive Future of the Past, How to Make Archaeology for Everyone. So we're really looking forward to learning more about Dr. Parcak, her life, her work, and what it all means to the future of all of us humans. Before we get started here with the introductions, I just want to say, welcome all attendees. Glad to have you aboard tonight in our the virtual world that we've created here for you. And I wanted to remind you that there's still time to get yourself in the door for the after party, so to speak. There's going to be a special Zoom Q&A program immediately following Dr. Parcak's lecture, and she'll be at your mercy on Zoom. Of course, you have to either be a member, or you can. If you're a member, you've probably already received the login for that. If you aren't a member but would like to participate in that Q&A, you can still do it by going to roychapmanandrewssociety.org/membership-support, and you can either make a donation or become a member, and someone will send you a link so you can join in all the post-lecture fun and ask your question. I believe we'll be doing that around 7:45, something like that. So anyway, I am going to give up the screen here to someone more directly connected to the Roy Chapman Andrews Society, and I'm talking, of course, about the president of their board of directors. So at this time, I would like you to please welcome the board president, Will Anderson. Welcome, Will.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg. Good evening, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us as we present our 18th Distinguished Explorers Award. By now, I think everyone's very used to, Zoom meetings and virtual events, but, for the Roy Chapman Andrews Society Board of Directors, hosting a large virtual event like this is a very new experience, so we are extremely grateful that Greg and Kristen agreed to leverage the skills they developed hosting the virtual Beloit International Film Festival for our event this evening. We did have something of a practice run earlier today when Greg and Kristen helped us out with a presentation to a number of high school students. So hopefully we've worked out all our bugs. I think we have. Good. So anyway, the mission of the Roy Chapman Andrews Society is to inspire scientific discovery by engaging with contemporary explorers who exemplify the legacy of Roy Chapman Andrews, Beloit's native son. So the presentation to the high school group, as well as a presentation to students at Beloit College earlier today, is a very important part of our desire to inspire students to follow in the footsteps of Roy Chapman Andrews and pursue a career focused on scientific exploration. But tonight is the main event, and we are excited to have all of you in attendance. But of course, tonight's event wouldn't have been possible without the help and generous support of our sponsors. So before we get too far into the program, I'd like to quickly read through our list of sponsors. Our top level sponsors this year, our discovery sponsors, is ABC Supply, Angus Young Architects, Engineers, State Line Community Foundation. We had sponsors of our student event earlier. Those sponsors were Larry and Karen Arft, Jim and Helen Olson, Joe and Don Stottleman, Tom and Min Warren, John and Becky Wong, and the Nice Family Foundation. Explorer sponsors included, again, Angus Young Architects and Engineers, Amy Lokrantz, Western Container, and Paula Wheelis. We have a number of patron sponsors you can see listed there on the screen. I don't want to take up too much time reading every single one, but we really appreciate our patron sponsors. And we also have a number of partnering sponsors, including the Ironworks Hotel, Resonate Web Marketing, Beloit College, the School District of Beloit, Beloit International Film Festival, Greg Gerard, and Kristen Kazabowski. So thank you very much for all of our sponsors. It's kind of a weird year this year. Normally we would have a dinner that raises quite a bit of funds for us. So this year we're relying more on encouraging people to become members and, of course, all of our great sponsors. One other order of business tonight. All of you may not know that in the city of Beloit, today has been declared Roy Chapman Andrews Day in honor of the event tonight. And so as part of this event, I'd like to read the proclamation that was passed by the city of Beloit, and that proclamation reads, whereas Roy Chapman Andrews devoted his childhood in Beloit, Wisconsin to the tireless pursuit of knowledge about the natural world. And whereas Roy Chapman Andrews secured his formal education through Beloit schools, culminating in his graduation from Beloit College in 1906. And whereas Roy Chapman Andrews went on from Beloit to become a world-famous explorer for New York's American Museum of Natural History, discovering new species of animals, including, during a series of daring expeditions to the Gobi of Mongolia, previously unknown dinosaurs, the first nests of dinosaur eggs, and fossils of mammals that lived alongside dinosaurs. And whereas the accomplishments of Roy Chapman Andrews are gaining attention and recognition today, both locally and nationally, through the efforts of the Roy Chapman Andrews Society of Beloit. And whereas the legacy of Roy Chapman Andrews will be celebrated virtually on Monday, April 26, 2021, when the Roy Chapman Andrews Society bestows its Distinguished Explorer Award on Dr. Sarah Parcak, internationally renowned Egyptologist, satellite archaeologist, and science communicator, who is the founding director of the Laboratory for Global Observation at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Now, therefore, the president of the Beloit City Council does hereby declare that Monday, April 26, 2021, be proclaimed Roy Chapman Andrews Day to honor visiting Egyptologist Dr. Sarah Parcak and to recognize the achievements of one of Beloit's most famous native sons, adopted this 19th day of April, 2021. So we're very grateful to the city of Beloit for recognizing the importance of this evening. So moving on, I'd like to introduce Scott Biermann, Beloit College president, who we have Greg can go ahead and start that clip.
Thank you for joining us. I am Scott Biermann, and I have the honor of being president at Beloit College. One of the many things the college and the city of Beloit share is Roy Chapman Andrews. Native to the city of Beloit and a graduate of the College of Beloit, he is a distinguished product of both, and we share in our appreciation of his extraordinary contributions to an understanding of our world. At this school, we take enormous pride in offering an education that is fundamentally tethered to the liberal arts practice of learning broadly and thinking deeply, but likewise an education in which students channel their experiences at the college into their professional and personal lives. We do so because we believe that a modern world in particular is eager for the fundamentally human skills that are foundational to a Beloit education. It is also a philosophy that is personified throughout Roy Chapman Andrews' remarkable life. His life of purposeful consequence that was itself born, developed, and nurtured through his youth in Beloit, both city and college. In Roy Chapman Andrews' autobiography titled Under a Lucky Star, he somewhat breathlessly and with unbridled bravado writes about his adventures and accomplishments. At the very start of this loving testimony to his own life, he notes, "Often I've had to sit on a lecture platform when I was going to speak and listen to a long introduction. It bored me stiff, and likewise the audience." After having read Andrew's autobiography, I suspect he was certain he could tell his story in a far more compelling way than anyone else, and was appalled when someone presented his life in anything other than one death-defying moment followed by another. And he was probably right. Lesson learned. I will therefore be uncharacteristically brief. After all, it is Dr. Sarah Parcak that you came to learn from. Welcome to Beloit, Dr. Parcak. It is wonderful to have all of you with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Scott Biermann, for that. And now I'd like to welcome Bill Green. And Bill Green is the Director Emeritus of Beloit College's Logan Museum of Anthropology and a past board member of the Society, who will introduce our distinguished explorer.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to introduce this year's Roy Chapman Andrews Society Distinguished Explorer awardee. Sarah Parcak is known worldwide as an archaeology innovator and pioneer. A native of Maine, she did her undergraduate work in Egyptology and archaeology at Yale University. She then earned a master's and a doctorate in Egyptian archaeology at Cambridge University in England. Since 2006, Dr. Parcak has been based at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, where she's not only a professor of anthropology, but also the founding director of the university's Laboratory for Global Observation. Dr. Parcak publishes widely in scientific journals, has received numerous research grants, is a National Geographic Society explorer, and won the 2016 TED Prize, a $1 million award that she used to establish the Global Explorer Citizen Science Initiative. Some archaeologists don't like to interact with the living, but Dr. Parcak shares her discoveries and her passion for archaeology with everyone. Just as Roy Chapman Andrews did, and as he enthralled the public with stories of expeditions around the world, Sarah Parcak puts the world's cultural heritage within everyone's reach. And she does this in multiple ways, from her book Archaeology from Space to her Global Explorer project, and from TED Talks to The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. 100 years ago, Beloit native Roy Chapman Andrews brought high-tech tools into the field, cameras and motor cars. Today, Sarah Parcak's toolkit adds space-age technology to find Stone Age ruins. Her explorations employ satellites as well as shovels, computers as well as camels. She has helped thousands of people experience the wonders of archaeology and even make their own discoveries of sites thousands of miles away. Dr. Parcak has been doing archaeology in the field since 1995. If you'll excuse a personal perspective, I started doing field archaeology in 1970. I'm older than some of the sites I've worked on. One thing I know is that archaeology is not just digging. In fact, it's not even mainly digging. In the field, it's really a study of landscapes, and in the lab, it's a study of nearly everything people have made or used. And we can always learn more about the places and things people have made and used because we're always developing new methods and new ways of thinking about the past and its meaning for us today. Now, the sites and the things we find are mostly one of a kind. Once they're gone forever. They're non-renewable resources, unique pieces of the human puzzle that can never be replaced. But sites and artifacts can also be sacred heritage, sometimes even ancestral remains. How then do we balance the need to know with the need to preserve? Well, we do the kind of archaeology that has the least impact on the ground. Really, it's not what you find, it's what you find out. And what we find out is often amazing. Apologies again for dwelling on myself. But with most of a lifetime spent as an archaeologist, I've seen incredible advances in how archaeology is done. I've experienced several Howard Carter moments. Howard Carter? In 1922, Carter was peering into the tomb of Tutankhamun, and he was asked, "Can you see anything?" He replied, "Yes, wonderful things." Roy Chapman Andrews knew that feeling in the Gobi. I've known that feeling here in the Midwest. And Sarah Parcak gets to have Howard Carter moments all the time. With our new technologies, it's happening more often than ever before. Most importantly, Sarah Parcak shares her Howard Carter moments with everyone. That's awesome. Really, I'm in awe. Her work is awe-inspiring. Detecting hundreds of ancient sites from space and doing the dirt archaeology to reveal details of past lives and engaging the public in this search, well, if that doesn't qualify someone for this award, I don't know what does. Therefore, to recognize excellence in scientific exploration, the Roy Chapman Andrews Society has chosen Dr. Sarah Parcak as the 2021 recipient of its Distinguished Explorer Award.
I'm going to read the citation that the board has written in awarding the Distinguished Explorers Award, and this reads: the Roy Chapman Andrews Society, Dr. Sarah Parcak, Egyptologist, space archaeologist, innovator, educator. Your approach to research has led to the discovery of new archaeological sites and the application of novel methods while exposing the prevalence of looting. Roy Chapman Andrews pioneered the use of the camera during his investigations of whales and the use of cars in the remote Gobi Desert. In 1926, Andrews recognized that most areas on land had already been explored, from the poles to the tropics, and counseled that the youth of the future must change his methods with respect to exploration. You, as one of those future youths, certainly changed archaeologists' methods. Your photographs are satellite satellite imagery, and your vehicles are satellites, neither of which could have been featured in Andrews' wildest dreams. Skeptics doubted your ability to use satellite remote sensing to further archaeological pursuits. Similarly, Roy Chapman Andrews' plans to use camels and cars during his exploration of Central Asia were declared foolhardy to impossible. You, like Andrews, prevailed. In doing so, you have provided insights into the cultures of ancient Egyptians, Romans, and Vikings. Your leadership in Global Explorer, your online platform for crowdsourcing of satellite data, produced hundreds of potential sites in Peru for experts to further investigate. Like Andrews, you have embraced the joy of communicating your research and have taken it a step further by involving the public and diverse groups in online research. In appreciation for these contributions, we are pleased to bestow on you the honor of Distinguished Explorer from the Roy Chapman Andrews Society this 26th day of April, 2021, from Beloit, Wisconsin. So congratulations, Dr. Parcak, on this award.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very deeply honored to you, to the Roy Chapman Andrews Society, and to everyone who's been a part of this. This has been a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'm so excited about being able to share my lecture with you.
Great.
All right, we're ready to go.
All set. It's all yours.
All right. Okay. Well, first of all, welcome to everybody tuning in. I know we're all pretty much used to Zoom lectures by now. I hope wherever you're tuning in from, spring has sprung. It certainly has sprung from here in Birmingham. It's been a beautiful, beautiful day. I always give a few warnings. We have a few cats. Every now and then they make a visit to assorted lectures that I've given, so you may see some kitty cats headbutting me or popping across the screen. Also, we have an 8-year-old, 8.5-year-old. He's very loud, which is great. All kids should be loud. Sometimes he's good. Sometimes he's a kid and he comes in and will wave and say hi. So I try to keep him off screen. I don't like to show his face in the general public just for privacy reasons. But you may hear a loud mommy and asking permission to do something that his father has said no to, because as you know, that's how kids work. Anyway, it's all good. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for for joining this evening. This has been such a huge honor for me. I had the pleasure and opportunity today in the early afternoon of speaking to a number of Beloit area students, high school, middle school, and a number of other people joined. It was a really fun lecture. So for anyone who watched that lecture earlier, the lecture you're about to see is about 96% different. Tried to give different material and being able to share, because I have a lot of research to share. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I know we're all so busy and pressed for time, especially now that the weather's getting better, and hopefully things are starting to ease with vaccines and everything. We're all thinking about the potential of returning to a much more new normal. So with all that being said, let me go ahead and share my screen, get my PowerPoint up. Okay, so okay, we're going to share my screen, and let me get, let's go to window, entire screen, okay. Share contents of your screen. Okay, we're going to go to share, and then we're going to go to PowerPoint, and I think we are off to the races. So what I want to share is something I did share with the students earlier today. This award for me is in many ways kind of full circle, because when I was an undergraduate at Yale University back in 1999 to 2000, I had the opportunity of working at the Yale Peabody Museum, analyzing material culture from ancient Nubia. So there are these amazing salvage expeditions that were done by Egyptologists, really trying to race against time to salvage these incredible archaeological sites along the Nile in modern-day Sudan. And a lot of the material from a couple of these expeditions was stored at the Yale Peabody Museum, where I got to work part of my sophomore year. And in the basement, which is about as basement-y as you can imagine a museum being, right above the doorway, sort of leading from one of the collections into another part of the collections, or at least the storage, there are these black and white, kind of grainy images of this guy in a strange hat in a tent in the desert. And the Yale Peabody Museum not only had, amazing Egyptology and archaeological material culture, but it also had an incredible paleontology collection. And I asked after a couple weeks, working in the basement, hey, who's that guy? What's he doing? Who was he? Because I didn't know. I was only 19 or 20 years old. And someone told me, oh, that's Roy Chapman Andrews. He was the head of the Natural History Museum, a long time ago, and a great science communicator. So really, that's really when I started to learn about him. I didn't know who he was or what he did. And what a privilege and an honor for me to have, started over 20 years ago in the basement of this museum, looking up to this extraordinary explorer, and someone who I read about and learned from and was inspired by. And now, of course, here we are today. So really, it is full circle. It's such an honor, and I'm just so grateful to the Roy Chapman Andrews Society. It reminds me of my young days, really kind of just learning about how to be an archaeologist and being inspired by these great figures from time. So I should say that the beautiful award is currently on our son's desk. It arrived in the mail. Our son took one look at it and said, "Thank you, it's mine." So it has a place of pride on our son's desk, who is very much a young explorer. I'll be talking to you tonight about Global Explorer. The real theme of my lecture is how to make archaeology more inclusive and more accessible to everyone. And I hope the main point is you walk away from this lecture really having an appreciation for how much how much more is possible now with the use of technology, with the use of citizen science and archaeology, and how much that you can participate in archaeology today. So hopefully you'll get to sign up. Go to globalexplorer.org. And we have a lot of educator resources for the educators that are tuning in. We love working with teachers, so hopefully that will allow you to get more engaged. Well, I had something pretty amazing happen to me about 2 years ago. So it was just before the pandemic. I was on an airplane going to, one of my many lectures, and I got on the airplane, and I got this weird text message from, or no, it wasn't even a text message, it was a Twitter message from someone that said, "Hey, we just saw you on Jeopardy!" And I thought, what? What is this person talking about? Saw me on Jeopardy? It's Twitter. Somebody's saying something weird. And I landed after my flight, and I saw about 15 missed calls and about 24 text messages. And my first inclination was, oh my gosh, who has died? Something terrible has happened to someone. Oh no. And I started to panic because I saw a lot of missed calls from my parents, and I just expected the worst. But no, I found out that I had been a question on Jeopardy. Which to me, as someone who grew up watching Jeopardy, and this is 2 years ago, Alex Trebek read my name, and what an enormous honor to be a Jeopardy contestant. So what I wanted to do tonight to honor Alex Trebek, we just recently lost him for cancer. I wanted to tell you my Alex Trebek story, which I really haven't properly shared publicly before, certainly not in this context. So I hope you will indulge me, because it's a nice way into the work that I do and remote sensing work, but also into, I guess, ways that I've been inspired and how to think differently about being a public communicator. So here is my story, and I know it is going to sound absolutely unbelievable to all of you, because it's still unbelievable to me, and it happened to me, but there is photographic proof that it happened. So just hang in there and let me tell you my story. So this all started in June of 2013. National Geographic was having their 125th anniversary celebration in Washington, D.C. So every June in pre-COVID times, they typically have about a week-long Explorer Symposium where they invite explorers from all over the world, and you spend this incredible week together learning from each other and being inspired by the amazing work done by paleontologists and archaeologists and botanists and biologists and conservation specialists, and you're all getting together, and it's wonderful. And well, the 125th anniversary was a big celebration. There was a black tie dinner at a really swanky museum in Washington, D.C., and they were honoring, at this particular event, Alex Trebek for his work with the National Geographic Bee, E.O. Wilson, the great Harvard entomologist. They were honoring Sylvia Earle, kind of a great underwater archaeology explorer, or underwater explorer. It was really this great event. So Alex Trebek was going to be there, and all the explorers were just buzzing, and they thought, wow, Alex Trebek, we hope, even just to see him from a distance, to say, we've seen Alex Trebek. He's just this iconic, great American, someone who was part of my childhood, all of our childhoods. And I thought even to see him would be great. Well, didn't see him. Well, after a couple days, a friend of mine showed up and said, hey, Alex Trebek, he's in the other room. Do you want to go meet him? And I'm thinking that my friend, is, knows him somehow. I'm like, oh my gosh, Alex Trebek, of course. I want to go see him. This is amazing. I'll even just get to say hi, shake his hand, say thank you for inspiring me with Jeopardy, and leave him alone. Well, I walked into this room, and it became clear in about 0.01 seconds that my friend had never met Alex Trebek in his life, and that we were busting in on a meeting between Alex Trebek and a very high-ranking National Geographic executive. My friend, a gentleman named Fred, he's an interesting character, and he sort of both Alex and this person looked up, and my friend went, Alex, great to see you. Let me introduce you to my friend Sarah. And my friend pretended like he'd known Alex for years, and I clearly had to roll along with it. So anyway, I was mortified, of course. And my friend Fred told him, hey, this is Sarah. She does all this great remote sensing work in Egypt. And Alex was a wonderful human. And without missing a beat, he walked over to a wall. And the wall had, one of these classic kind of 15 feet by 10 foot tall National Geographic maps of the world. And he looked at me, and I thought, oh boy, there is a surprise coming. And he said, Sarah, I know you have worked in Egypt, but have you worked in, and he then pointed at the map and pointed at Tunisia. Now, I should say, Alex had no idea who I was. He'd never met me before. And he, it became clear, wanted to play this game of gotcha with me because, of course, he knew I worked in Egypt as an Egyptologist, and he wanted to see where else in the world I'd worked, and he was just guessing. I said, well, Alex, funny you mentioned that. I've just, finished up this great collaborative project with colleagues, mapping out Roman roads and forts and settlements along the deserts of Tunisia. It was amazing. You find all of these extraordinary roads that just show this incredible, thousands of kilometers long road system that the ancient Romans used to help control trade routes in North Africa and collect taxes. And we just mapped all these roads that we couldn't see before by using different parts of the light spectrum. And visibly, maybe you can see them, maybe you can't, but they just pop out when you process the satellite data. Really amazing stuff. We even find things like Roman period forts, and we're able to map the kind of the scale of what's there. It's awesome. And he looked at me, he goes, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but okay, we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it. Okay, so you've worked in Egypt, you've worked in Tunisia, but, and he was pointing his fingers and going around and around and around this huge map. I had no idea where in the world he'd point. And he said, but have you worked in Italy? And he looked at me thinking that he got me. I said, well, Alex, I'm really glad you asked me about Italy because, actually just this incredible paper just came out in the Journal of Archaeological Science that I published with my colleagues, Dr. Chris Strudd and Professor Simon Key of Southampton University. And if you've ever flown into Rome's Fiumicino Airport, which is just right here, just to the south, there's a large hexagonal basis, which was started by the Emperor Claudius in 116 AD, expanded by the Emperor Trajan in 120 AD. And, there's this, it was an entrepot.com for the ancient Roman world. All the goods would have been offloaded and sorted and categorized and cataloged, and then they would have gone up the Tiber River to Rome and elsewhere for the elite of Rome. And one of the big questions that our colleagues had at Portus was, they found all of these boatyards and warehouses and other structures, but it was a pretty important city that lasted for a while. The question was, could there potentially have been an amphitheater there, like an ancient entertainment complex? And they knew there was probably one there, but they couldn't find it, and they'd done all this mapping work. So I proposed to use high-resolution multispectral satellite imagery to map the fields and to see what we could see. And in processing the imagery and in looking in different parts of the light spectrum, because buried ancient foundations show up differently in different parts of the light spectrum because vegetation responds more strongly in the near infrared. We can kind of see this blob here. Well, in the near infrared part of the light spectrum, you see this very, very clear 40-meter across, ovoid structure with I had my phone, I was showing him these images, with gates, clear northern buildings that are probably places where the gladiators train. You see this clear east-west road and all of these other structures and all of these other features. We used LiDAR laser mapping. You can see it pretty clearly. And in fact, we were able to map a number of potential river channels as well. Well, he's looking at me like he's kind of angry and super impressed. And he goes, okay, I am going to get you in the next question. He goes, there is absolutely no way that you will have worked in the next country that I have thought through. He goes, just watch out. I said, okay, try me. And he's just looking at me and I'm just looking at him. And of course, it's a game and it's wonderful and it's glorious. And you absolutely could not have made this up in a million years. So he pointed and he said, okay, I know you've worked in Egypt. I know you've worked in Tunisia. I know, as crazy as it sounds, you as an Egyptologist have even worked in Italy. But there is no possible way that you in 1,000 years could have ever done any archaeological work in Romania. And he looks at me. And he smiles. He goes, I've got you. I said, yeah, unfortunately, Alex, you don't, because I just wrapped up an incredible collaborative project with my colleagues at Cluj University, where we worked at the ancient Dacian capital of Sarmisegetia Regia. It's an amazing site. The Dacians lived there, and the Romans went in back to Trajan again around 120, and they wanted their lead, they wanted their silver. And so we used laser mapping because, of course, the site, as you could see, as I was describing it to him, was covered in trees. And so we had to use laser mapping to be able to figure out what was beneath all the trees. And here's an early map. This is what it looks like on the ground, but you can see all, all the dense vegetation around it. And, LiDAR is a laser mapping system that allows you to look through point cloud data and basically get digital elevation models of what's beneath the trees. You strip away the vegetation and you are left with before and after. So here's the central part of the site, which you can see visually. But what we're interested in is this very large ditch. It's a classic Roman ditch fortification system. And you can see even the archaeologists, they worked there for years. They couldn't see the forest for the trees. We had to use the LiDAR imagery in order to be able to map what's there. Well, anyway, this is proof that this happened. Here's Alex and I. So at the end of our discussion, he looked at me and I looked at him and I said, dude, like, come on. He's like, all right, you win, you got me. And I asked him for a picture and he goes, no, we're gonna do a picture tonight at the big formal event. And he said, I'm warning you, I didn't realize it was black tie. I sort of went full lounge lizard, but it'll be great. So here's a picture of Alex Trebek and I back in 2013. Here's to you, Alex. Thank you so much for being such an extraordinary person, for inspiring all of us, and certainly inspiring me to be a better science communicator, and to giving me a story that I will no doubt be sharing for the rest of my life. So on that note, I thought it would be good to dive into my own archaeological work, and you've seen a bit about how satellites can work. One of the great joys of my life, of my career, has been the opportunity to collaborate with diverse people. The work that I did, it's never me, it's never I found, it's always we found. I've worked with colleagues across Europe, in the North Atlantic, in Central America, in South America, in Southeast Asia, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. And the core of my work is Egypt. I've been an Egyptologist for 20 years. It's just been such an honor and such a privilege to work with the Ministry of Antiquities. So starting in 2011 with the Arab Spring, we noted that there was all this looting going on. So with generous funding from the National Geographic Society, I collaborated with a team of people, and we looked at the scale and extent of looting across Egypt. This was published in a pretty big archaeology journal a couple of years ago. And you can see just in 2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, this is in the pyramid fields, you can just see there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of looting pits that just appear over one site. We were able to map it, scale and extent. So looting pits show up in a pretty similar way at archaeological sites around the world. There are these dark ovoid circles, and you can see them pretty clearly. So we mapped the number, we mapped the scale, we mapped the extent, just to show the density. So we're able to map over 200,000 looting pits at almost 300 archaeological sites, and showing the density and where the looting happened and how it happened and why it happened. And to me, the interesting thing isn't that we mapped the looting, although that was certainly important. There was a long-standing theory that the looting in Egypt had gotten significantly worse after the Arab Spring. It makes sense. There's instability. Looting is worse in Egypt. Looting is worse in Syria. Looting is worse in Iraq and Turkey and Libya and so many other places. That wasn't the story. The story was that in addition to mapping out the looting, we looked at tourist numbers, we looked at inflation, we looked at youth unemployment, we looked at multiple economic factors to try to figure out when the looting had gotten bad versus what happened in Egypt's economy. And the story is so much more interesting and so much more layered, as it always is. Looting in Egypt was pretty stable from 2002 up to 2008, maybe a little bit worse, up and down, but nothing to really, really get worried about. But starting in 2009 and 2010, the looting spiked. So it wasn't the Arab Spring that made the looting bad, it was the global recession. So looting in Egypt got bad after the Arab Spring because it was already bad. It was getting worse. The Arab Spring was the tipping point. So again, it's not, I told the students earlier today in my lecture, it's not what you find, it's what you find out, right? We always have to be digging for the deeper story, the deeper meaning behind the data, because it's never just a simple story. It's always so much more interesting and important. So I want to share with you right now the work that I am doing, the work that is ongoing at the archaeological site of Lisht. This is a joint mission with the Ministry of Antiquities in Egypt. You can see here I've named a number of my Egyptian collaborators. I have Egyptian co-directors, Egyptian experts that I work with. People think that being a dig director is really fancy and that you have all this power and all this control and all this glory. The reality is my team does the work. I am the facilitator. I am the organizer. But really, I'm not. I have this amazing Egyptian team that I work with, and they're the ones doing most of the work. So I tell people my job as a dig director is to make sure that everyone is safe, everyone is well fed, and everyone has enough coffee and chocolates. So I go and walk about every day on site, and I make sure that everyone has coffee and everyone has tea. And if everyone is happy, because that's the key to being a good leader, you bring in the best people possible, you allow them the resources and the space and the respect they need to get their work done, to put their best foot forward. And as long as they're caffeinated and they're eating good food, they will do great work. So for any of you listening, I'm available to speak to business organizations as well. It seems to work in Egypt. So I want to tell you a little bit about the site. To me, it's one of the most fascinating archaeological sites in Egypt. It dates to about 1800 BC. It was Egypt's capital in the Middle Kingdom. Why is the Middle Kingdom important? It was Egypt's capital in the Middle Kingdom. So this great period of Renaissance. So in the Old Kingdom, everyone knows the Old Kingdom because it was Egypt's Great Pyramid Age. The first intermediate period, which followed, was this period of great drought and economic and social unrest. And after that, Egypt stabilized. So it had this great flourishing of art and architecture and literature. And it was Egypt's great Renaissance period. And this site, the site of Lisht, or the ancient capital of Ichtawi, which stands for the seizing of the two lands, or the united of the two lands, is where Egypt's capital was. It was Egypt's capital for over 400 years. It's an incredibly important site. And I was drawn there because of the looting that I noted post-Arab Spring. I've always been fascinated by the Middle Kingdom and by the site of Lisht, compared to the Old Kingdom with the pyramids and the New Kingdom with the Valley of the Kings and all the mummies. We comparatively know very, very little about the Middle Kingdom. So I'm just really interested in all that we could learn. So that's what started my work there. And this is what the looting looks like. You see a deep shaft tomb. You see mud brick covering the site, covering the tomb, and this tomb would have been intact. We mapped hundreds and hundreds of these looting pits, and it looks like hundreds and hundreds of these tombs were indeed intact. And these tombs would have been full of coffins and statues and shabtis and linens and all these fine goods, because the capital of Ichtawi was incredibly wealthy. The two kings, Amenemhet the father, and Senwosret the first, the son, that founded the city of Ichtawi. They in creating this capital, it was a place where the middle and upper middle classes flourished. All the great stories that we read from the Middle Kingdom were probably written at Ichtawi. You have this incredibly egalitarian society. All these great artisans and craftspeople and tradespeople, they were all living and working at this site, so it would have been wealthy. All these people could have afforded tombs. So I want to talk to you about our work. So it's located in the southern part of the site, and this is a large tomb that would have originally been roofed in antiquity because of earthquakes and quarrying. It's been cut out, so it originally would have had 3 niches. It would have had a series of columns supporting the hallway, which is right here. So this is at the start of the season with my Egyptian collaborators, Mohammed Yosef and Adel Okasha. We're talking about kind of how to proceed with the work. And that's the thing about archaeology. Again, you think it's this, you're leading it. You're the one making all the decisions. Archaeology, the best archaeology is only possible when you are consistently and constantly collaborating. So you're constantly having dialogues and talking about ideas and testing theories. Really, that is the only way to get good work done in Egypt, because our Egyptian colleagues, they live and breathe this. This is what they do, and they're really, really, really good at it. So here's us working away. We work with a local workforce. We record and document everything. You can see this is what's called a classic T-shaped tomb. You really see what I mean in a couple minutes. So this long hallway connecting to, or rather a long causeway connecting to a hallway with columns, 3 niches. You can't really see it well, but you're about to be able to. Now, one of the things that we didn't know as we were digging, we had no idea who this person was. We didn't know anything about them. Was it a man? Was it a woman? Who was he? Was it a them? And over the course of the season, we found his name, which was one of the most exciting days. Intef. Intef was a pretty common Egyptian name, and this is Intef. And I told you before, the Middle Kingdom was famous because of its extraordinary art. You can just see the delicate painting. It's still bright orange, buried for thousands of years. This gorgeous little side nostril, the facial musculature. This is an amazing, amazing period of time, and this was Intef. This was a piece that was in the tomb. We found several in situ, that means in place, pieces. So this reads Intef, Mes, and Ipi, Matheru, or Nebheru. So it basically means Intef, born of Ipi, the justified, and Ipi was his mother. Isn't that amazing? So in his tomb, he is honoring his mother. Who was his mom? We don't know. We think we found some sculpture or statue fragments or relief fragments of her. This says Samwasret, who was one of Intef's sons. And we learned over the course of the season who Intef was. He was a great general in the army. He essentially was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the head of the treasury. He was one of Samwasret I, this great king. He was one of his close confidants. So he merited a tomb in this place. He was very, very wealthy. Over the course of the season, making sure the tombs are protected became really important. So we made sure that the tomb itself was well guarded and well lit. We installed doors because we wanted to make sure that the tomb was protected. This is so important for the archaeological work that we do in Egypt. We really want to be sure. We work with local communities, local guards. Everything is kind of locked down so that looters can't get in. We also, it's not just about using satellite imagery and excavating. We use state-of-the-art 3D mapping to figure out what sites look like. And in that way, even though you can't go to Egypt, or rather it's hard to visit this site, we took thousands and thousands of data points from what's called the differential GPS. And using that information, we were able to map exactly what the tomb looked like. So here we go. Here you see this, you can see these three niches pretty well. We'll show you what they look like in a second. It wasn't complete. That's the thing that we learned about this tomb. This particular niche was started. It wasn't complete. This one was that there was a big statue there that was looted, and this room was partly reused later on. But you really get a sense of the scale of what was there. And this is backed up a little bit. Again, you really see the tomb in context. And there would have been thousands and thousands of tombs like this. It was this massive mausoleum. It was like a dozen or hundreds of New Orleans cemeteries, all put one next to the other. That is the size and scale of this particular cemetery. With the two pyramids of Amenemhet I and Samwasret I, of course, they would have been surrounded by the thousands and thousands of people who lived, worked, and then ultimately died in Ichtawi. They would have wanted to be buried close to the kings. Now, in 2016, so that was 2015, 2016, we went back, we excavated the causeway, which you can see here. This is our wonderful workforce working away, clearing down very carefully. So in archaeology, we dig stratigraphically, so we go layer by layer by layer. And you can see here, this is a beautiful, for all of you cat lovers out there, this is the goddess Sekhmet. And this little amulet probably would have been worn around someone's neck. So you see the little loop right here. So someone's lucky amulet from thousands of years ago. And just what a glorious treat to be able to find these exquisite little objects as you're digging, little reminders that these are people who are just like us. They were obsessed with cats. They loved their animals. They loved their pets. They believed in good luck and good fortune and the gods. Religion and faith were very important to them, and much like religion and faith are important to so many of us. So just ways to connect us with who these people were, and to try to get us to remember, we're digging up our ancestors. Maybe we're not directly related to them, but certainly they're the ancestors of the people who live and work in Egypt today. We also ran a field school for very young, talented Egyptian archaeologists, which was lots of fun. We taught them about excavation and mapping and surveying. So that was great. And I firmly believe, of course, that we continue this. It's so important to pass on our skills to the next generation. So kind of the theme of my talk today, it's about ultimately, whenever you have great privilege in a field like science, how do you leverage your privilege and pass it on and train others and empower them to achieve their full potential. That's my goal now in archaeology. You know, I've been so blessed to be able to work on these amazing projects around the world and run projects and work with great people. Now it's my job to make sure that younger people in the field and my Egyptian colleagues and kids who are tuning in, you know, that everyone has the opportunity to help participate and be an explorer as well. So in 2017, that was our last proper season into early 2018. We'd hoped to go back in May of 2020. Of course, with the pandemic, we couldn't. But this just gives you a sense of the landscape. You know, just unbelievably beautiful. We're outside Cairo. It's about 2 hours south of Cairo. You have this old cemetery here. So it's this interesting melange of the old and the new. This ancient cemetery stops and the new cemetery starts. We would often, you know, the local village would have funerals. We would always stop our work to honor the deceased. But seeing the way, excuse me, they would bring in the coffin and put the person to rest. It was this eerie sense of timelessness and things not changing and things not moving, because in many ways these are ancient mastabas. These are like ancient Egyptian tombs, the ones that you saw that were looted before. You also see this real change from stark desert to fertile Nile. And for the ancient Egyptians, this is the difference between the ancient Kemet, the rich, black, fertile land that allowed ancient Egypt to flourish, and Deshret, the harsh desert land, which was a place where evil beings lived. It was not to be trusted. And you really get a sense of that starkness of the world of life and the world of death. And it was a constant reminder to us of all that we were doing, of all that we were at stake. And again, you see our tremendous Egyptian team working very hard. So in 2017, our goal is to finish excavating the tomb itself, to start conservation, and to clear the area around the tomb, in addition to doing large-scale mapping across the site. So this is one of the most exciting moments. So here you see our amazing Egyptian team, and my Egyptian foreman, Omer. He's removing this block, and what we found as we pulled this block up was nothing less than the actual tomb shaft of Intef himself. So this is a before, and this is what it looked like after. So I mentioned before, this is a classic T-shaped tomb. I was not joking. This is a classic T-shaped tomb, so it's about 2 meters down. And what you often see in these classic T-shaped tombs, it's not just that the tomb itself, by the way, is not in the niches you saw earlier. The tomb itself, or the tombs, would have been in deep, 5, 10, 15-meter shaft tombs leading down to a series of chambers, which is where these individuals would have been buried. And it's not just, of course, Intef. It's his children, it's his grandchildren, it's his cousins. Anyone who could potentially get a tomb in Intef's tomb would have built one. And then we have, of course, later intrusive tombs. So we did conservation work. We're trying to protect the mud brick. You can see the careful wall that we've put around the site in order to protect it. And another shot going from, so this is going from east to west. You see the niches that we started in the first season. This is the hall, and you just get a sense of the scale of this tomb. It really would have been impressive. But, so much for the tomb itself. I want to share with you some of the amazing things that we found. Now, I told you that the Middle Kingdom was this incredible period of painting, of art, and these are objects as they're coming out of the ground, moments after they've come out of the ground, after we've mapped them, after we've very carefully placed them in 3D within our grid system. We carefully plot all the points because we want to reconstruct what was there to see if we can put it back together. And you see the amazing colors. These look so freshly painted. It looks like it was painted yesterday. We very carefully bag it and tag it after we record it and send it up for conservation. That's really the most important thing. And I mentioned before that the vivid colors. Look at this. So this is a scene from an offering tableau. You can see grapes, you can see rushes, you can see just beautifully painted reliefs. So, the art, as I mentioned before, the art from this period of time was just extraordinary, and it's probably a biased, of course. It's my favorite period of time in ancient Egypt. This is a great symbol. So the B in ancient Egypt, Nesubiti, stands for the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. So it's a symbol of kingship. And look at the level of detail. Look at the beautiful wings, look at the tail, look at the body. It's just so beautiful. The ancient Egyptians had such a deep appreciation for their natural world. And it's inspiring. It's inspiring us. It should be inspiring to us today in the face of a global climate crisis. Can we honor the natural world in the same way that the ancient Egyptians did? We were able to find a number of intact pieces of pottery, which is really cool because this is an offering stand. Here are several bowls, and you really get a sense of what daily life was like in ancient Egypt. I said before, it's not what you find, it's what you find out. How do you reconstruct past lifeways at these famous archaeological sites? Well, we had some challenges because, of course, you always have challenges when you do archaeological excavations. So we dug down 5 meters, and after 5 meters, we hit water. The water table has risen significantly in the last 3,500, 4,000 years. Water is very dangerous in tombs. It can come in really quickly. So the second we hit water, we said, enough. We absolutely cannot have any risk to any of our staff. So the next season when we go back, hopefully later this year with the pandemic lifting, knock on wood, we'll have pumps. The safety of our team is first and foremost. Anytime our team does any excavation work in tomb shafts, they're wearing helmets, they're wearing masks, they're wearing goggles, and they're wearing protective footwear as well as gloves. Safety is the same whether you are a villager or whether you are from another country. It doesn't matter. Everybody's lives are equal. Everybody is the same on our dig, and everyone deserves the same level of care and treatment. So we really make sure that all of our workforce has appropriate safety equipment and protocols, and they know they are going to get into huge trouble from me if they go into a tomb shaft without appropriate safety attire. I've yelled at people before because I don't, sometimes it's people just being foolish and silly or being a little bit lazy, and absolutely not. I will take absolutely no risks whatsoever for my team. We're very lucky to find several things in situ. In situ means in place, as I said before. Here's this beautiful offering bowl that someone left thousands of years ago. Maybe it was one of Intef's ancestors going to make offerings for his great-great-grandfather. It presents this really wonderful scene of, really what life would have been like thousands of years ago. I mentioned before that conservation is the core of what we do. So we hired local workmen to make mud bricks in the same way that ancient Egyptians made mud brick, and we put those on top of the tomb to protect it. Here we have one of our wonderful workmen, Saeed. He is 100% posing for this picture. He basically said in Arabic, take a picture of me like you'd expect to see in National Geographic. So of course, how could we say no to him? He's 100% posing. Great excavator. So in addition to the archaeological work which we did at Intef's tomb, for us, one of the most important things was mapping the scale and the extent of the looting, because each looting pit meant a new Middle Kingdom tomb, new in the sense of it hadn't been mapped before by previous excavations. So here's our wonderful mapping team, Dr. Reda Esmet El-Arafi and Said Mahmoud. And so they went out every day and did pretty intensive survey work and were able to map all of these tombs. You can see every tomb is different. Some are shaft tombs, so they go down. Some are family tombs. You see multiple tombs. Some are partly dug into the bedrock. Here you see shrines. Some have mud brick. There's no one typical tomb in the Middle Kingdom. There's a diversity of tombs and tomb types, and that's why it's so important for us to document all of them. So this was announced in 2018, so a little over 2 years ago, excuse me, by National Geographic. It's one of the largest groupings of Middle Kingdom burials ever discovered. So 800 tombs. It is not insignificant, and it's helping us to reconstruct what obviously life was like in ancient Egypt, but also death. And so for me, forward a little bit. For me, so the irony is, in order to find out about life in ancient Egypt, you can't just excavate settlements. And by the way, we're exploring the ancient Egyptian capital of Ichtawi, which is buried beneath the floodplain, and we have a pretty good sense of where it is. In order to figure out who lived there, you have to work in tombs, which is what we do. And so in order to learn about the actual living, breathing people of Ichtawi, you have to analyze their bones. And so we worked with our project bioarchaeologist, Dr. Christine Lee of Cal State LA, and she analyzed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bones that we had excavated from the tomb, not just of Intef, but in the area. And she said something really interesting that I want to share with you, which we really haven't talked a lot about yet. So, after she's been there and she's analyzing the bones, I'm going on my walkabout, and I ask her, hey, Christine, how's it going? And she looked at me. She has a wonderful sense of humor. She said, Sarah, your bones are boring. And I thought, oh no, here we've brought on this eminent bioarchaeologist, and she says our bones are boring. And I started to apologize. She says, no. It's actually an amazing thing. She said, typically on sites in Egypt, because she'd done a lot of work in Egypt, you see, high levels of infant mortality, disease, things that show you that life wasn't easy, life wasn't good. And yet what you have at Lisht is a pretty consistent pattern of death. In other words, the people who lived and died at Lisht were healthy. They were well off. They were eating well. The bones are strong. This was a very healthy population. In other words, it's exactly what you'd expect to see from a middle and upper middle class cemetery. In other words, the bones matched the tombs. And we weren't expecting to see this at all. So again, in order to figure out who lived in these places, you have to start looking at how and where they died. So I don't want to run out of time. I know I'm probably end up going over a little bit, too much to share with you, but I mentioned making archaeology inclusive for everybody. So it's not just about these projects. We're working with different teams. It's not just about collaborating and having jointly run projects with the Egypt Ministry of Antiquities, but it's much bigger than that. It's about how do we get the world to participate in helping us map archaeological sites. So here's the challenge. A little bit of a Debbie Downer for a second. As you all know, we are facing pretty significant challenges with climate change. And oceans are going to rise. That there is no question that in the next 20 to 30 years, oceans will probably rise at least a foot. We're hoping it won't, but at least a foot. So what can we do to stop this? Because so many islands, so many communities by oceans are going to be devastated. And many archaeological sites are going to be lost. We have the time now to map these sites and figure out what we can save and how we can save it. We've got to work quickly. And we archaeologists doing this kind of work, we can't do it by ourselves. I don't like to use the word can't, but we absolutely cannot do this by ourselves. We need the help of the world. And this is where you come in. So that's really the impetus that drove me to start Global Explorer. So this was a result of funding, very generous funding, $1 million funding from the TED Prize. We built Global Explorer, which is an online citizen archaeology platform that we use to help map archaeological sites. We started in Peru. We're going to India next. Our goal ultimately is to map the world, and especially using things like machine learning. So why did we choose Peru? Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, we had great contacts and connections there. We knew their Ministry of Culture was very open to using technology. It's a pretty, aside from the rainforest area, in general, it's a pretty deserty country, so a lot of archaeological sites are exposed, they're open, pretty easy to find. So for all those reasons, and the other major reason is that there's great satellite imagery there. So we had all sorts of boxes ticked, and we decided we were going to Peru. And of course, we got the full buy-in from the Ministry of Culture. I went down to Peru a number of times, and let me tell you, that was an absolute joy. Peru. The people were wonderful. My colleagues are wonderful. I have a number of friends there. The food's incredible, and of course, the archaeology is just extraordinary. So I'm just so grateful to my colleagues and friends in Peru. Other than this would not have happened without them. We wanted to make sure that the platform was transparent, so we always shared the number of users, the imagery they've looked at, how long the expedition was ongoing. We also partnered with a number of organizations in country. This is Dr. Larry Coben of the Sustainable Preservation Initiative. They help work with local women on or next to archaeological sites and empower them and really allow them to use their great artistry, making handicrafts, in order to sell objects to tourists, to help revitalize their economies, help send their kids to school. It was just so inspiring getting to meet them. So for me, I think there's this myth around, these cultures are to a large extent dead and gone, and they're thousands of years ago. That is not true at all. These cultures are, in so many cases, they're living today. These are Inca, so many extraordinary indigenous Native North American cultures, the Maya. These cultures are not gone. They're not disappeared. They're active. They're living. What can we do to help empower them, to help protect and preserve their extraordinary cultures that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. So when I talk about making archaeology more inclusive for everyone, it's not just about global explore, it's about what can we do, how can we leverage this technology to put the power back in the hands of the indigenous peoples, in whose hearts and souls these cultures live. Still to this day, we have so much to learn from them. So the platform itself was a game. I should say, if you go to globalexplore.org now, you can sign up. The platform's down because we're busy redeveloping it. We'll be relaunching it later this year. There are 10 levels. You start out by mapping looting, then you look at illegal construction on sites. You end up moving to discovery. You see all this information. You can see here what looting looks like. And I told you, looting is the same everywhere in the world. This could be Egypt. This is exactly what looting looks like in Egypt. So it's pretty easy to detect. There are a series of training videos that people take. And you learn what looting looks like on satellite imagery. And this is exactly what the platform looks like. We wanted to give the users an experience virtually identical to the work that we do in mapping archaeological sites. So here you see the satellite image, 200 by 200, 300 by 300 meters in size. You see an area and you mark there's looting or no looting, there's a site or there's no site. You've gone through and done a lot of examples. If you're confused, you've revisited the tutorial. And I can hear some of you going, wait a minute. You're showing a map. You're showing where there could be archaeological sites. Isn't this going to lead the looters right to where the sites are? Well, here is what I'm asking you. Where's the GPS information? Where's the latitude and longitude? Where is the map? The only GPS information on this image is given to us at Global Explorer, the back end. No one else has this data. And then we ultimately take all the findings by the people using the platform and we share it directly with archaeologists at ministries in country. Now, of course, data can always go missing, data can be stolen. That's an issue everywhere across the world. That doesn't matter where you are, even US, Canada, Europe, doesn't matter. But we have the highest levels of security and data protection possible. So there's no way that people can go from a site they find on Global Explorer to Google Earth or any satellite imagery and find it. It's just impossible. So you can see we partnered with a number of other entities and organizations. Don't have time to talk about them. But as I said before, the archaeological features are pretty easy to find in places like Peru. So here's a large Inca fortress that's on top of a mountain area. We partnered with National Geographic. They provided some pretty amazing storytelling venues. So they shared all of these wonderful old stories that have been done in and around Machu Picchu. Here you see Machu Picchu itself. I've had the chance to visit. It truly is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I've been all over the world, and it's just absolutely breathtaking. So to date, I should say 2019, we've had over 100,000 people from over 100 countries who've looked at over 18 million satellite images, and they've uncovered over nearly 30,000 potential archaeological features, and over 700 of which are major archaeological sites. We've worked with colleagues, we've helped to identify them. So here you have all the countries in the world where people have come from. We're missing some countries in Central Africa. We're missing Greenland, obviously part of Denmark, and we are missing North Korea. So I've always joked, if anyone knows Dennis Rodman, the next time he's heading over to visit with Kim Jong-un, can we just throw Global Explorer on an iPad? It's probably not politically correct, but I want exploration to be for everybody. So maybe he can get on the platform and help find it, help find sites. Now, for us, I mentioned before, again, it's not just about working in countries. It's doing the archaeological work. It's about empowering local people with the tools that they need or desire in order to make them, able to do the best jobs they can. These individuals, these archaeologists, are so talented. They're so passionate. They're brilliant at what they do, and so we're able to provide very high resolution satellite imagery to our collaborators. So this is Dr. Luis Jaime Castillo, who was Minister of Culture for a while. He's a professor at Catholic University in Lima, really extraordinary individual, done amazing work with drones. And he and his team took our data. They were able to map a number of new Nazca lines using drones. For us, this is so exciting because that's the point of the platform. Ultimately, we provide this data to local archaeologists. They then take the data and do with it exactly what they need to do in order to do the best jobs possible. So I want to wrap up by talking to you about our about the work that we're doing right now in India. So we've gone to Peru. We're now going to India. So this is a close partnership working and generously funded by the Tata Trusts in India, in Delhi. This is a close collaborative project with the Indian Ministry of Culture, specifically the Archaeological Survey of India. You know, when I talk about making archaeology inclusive, you know, we as an organization, we at Global Explorer don't go into countries and tell governments, hey, this is what we're doing. You know, that's unethical, it's colonialist. We need to change the conversation. What we do after lots of feelers and backing and forthing and getting a sense, is the country interested in the work we're doing? When we start to sit down with governments and partner organizations and country, we say, hey, this is who we are as an organization. Here's what we do. Here's what we've done in other countries. Here is a menu of what we can do for you. What would you like done? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What is urgent? What would you like to see done in the next 1, 5, 10, 20 years? What do we not have listed here that we could potentially do collaborating with you? And so we always let the in-country governments and partner organizations guide what we do. Now we're clear, we can't do everything. We just can't. We have to be realistic. What's possible with funding and timing and staffing and technology. But what do you want done that we maybe aren't thinking about right? Or how can we leverage resources in country and we collaborate? To start, it's how you build trust. So this is a project that's been 3 years in the making. So as I said, we're in the process of rebuilding the platform right now. We're going to be launching in a number of states, hopefully later this year. But for those of you that haven't been to India, the culture there, the archaeology, the history is mind-blowing. There are dozens and dozens of diverse and extraordinary cultures going back many, many, many thousands of years. Extraordinary temples and stepwells and settlements and religious and holy sites, many of which are revered today and worshipped today. There's so many active, living, amazing cultures and places in India. So it's such an honor and such a thrill to be able to work there next. And we're going to be there for a while. There are 30 separate states in India. As I said before, we're launching in a couple states. We're probably going to be starting in Gujarat, which contains, of course, part of sort of crossroads of Silk Roads. So many diverse cultures are there. Just an extraordinary place. We'll be adding on states over time. We're going to be incorporating a machine learning element into the platform. Right now, when you go on, or before when you got on, sometimes images had cloud cover. Sometimes the images were a little blurry. But what we're doing with the machine is we're getting rid of all the cloud cover, we're getting rid of all the bad imagery, and we're training the machine to identify potential archaeological features, which then it will feed back to the crowd. And the crowd will be prioritizing and analyzing and assessing those features as discovered by the machine. So it'll be a better user experience for our audience. We'll train the machine to go faster and faster and faster. So the machine learning component, it's not like the machine is finding the sites. It's only finding areas that have a high likelihood or high probability of being archaeological sites. So users, before you'd have to go through 30, 50, 100 tiles before you find a specific archaeological feature. Now you'll probably see an archaeological feature every image or every other image. So it's always about improving the experience for the users, because ultimately we're grateful. We're grateful to our wonderful users from around the world. As I said before, our goal is to map the world. We're going to be adding other countries in the next couple of years. Obviously, as the pandemic lifts, we'll be able to add more and more and more. And our goal is to get millions of people around the world helping to find archaeological sites. And by the way, this is not a fake experience. We analyzed the efficacy of the crowd, and typically the crowd had between an 85 and 90% success rate in identifying archaeological features. That's not that much worse than people like me who've been trained in this for 20 years. So as you see on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when they do ask an audience, the crowd is wise. People are really good at this. They get good. They get better over time. So again, we're so grateful to the people that have helped us. I invite all of you to go to globalexplorer.org. Sign up. We'll be launching later this year. We've had people using the platform from 5 to almost 100 years old. It truly is family friendly. We're hoping to inspire people all around the world, not just to be archaeologists, because you are when you use Global Explorer, you're a citizen archaeologist, but to help us protect and preserve our heritage. Because ultimately, given where we are as a world, we say in the end, we envision a world where our cultural heritage data is shared openly, widely, and with great relevance for all informing global decision making. Right now, as a world, we are in a very tough spot, as all of you know. The COVID virus is raging. There are variants that are splitting off. There are tens of millions of people around the world that have gotten the virus. Hundreds of millions of people have had their lives completely upended. Or, look, here I am on Zoom. I would far rather be in Beloit right now, talking to all of you, getting to meet you, getting to spend time with you. But here we are. We're in a different world. We're having really difficult conversations right now about in our own country about race, about white supremacy, about migration, about the value of diversity. And I think ultimately we are a better world for our diversity. And that's what archaeology shows us. It shows us the extraordinary accomplishments and achievements of the ancient Egyptians and the Inca and the people of the Great Zimbabwe and the Maya and indigenous Native North Americans and so on and so on and so on. All these amazing cultures, these amazing peoples with language and music and art and architecture. And it's who we are. It defines who we are. Diversity makes us a better species. The world would be pretty boring if we were all the same. Look at America. Everyone calls it a melting pot, but it's really not. It's more like a salad. It's kind of a distinct stew. It tastes great all together, but there are all these wonderful bits and parts that kind of fit together. I think ultimately that's what archaeology has to teach us. It shows us our extraordinary background, all these extraordinary living cultures, and also how we define our humanity, right? Our humanity is defined through great creativity and ultimately through resilience. With all these big challenges we're facing today, guess what? We have been facing them for thousands and thousands of years. We will survive this. We will get through it. We will be better for it. We're having big conversations right now about the middle class. And guess what? And the importance of the middle class for our own economy. And guess what? That's the story of Lish. That's the story of Ichtawi. The Middle Kingdom thrived because old power structures broke down. And there's a new rise of the middle class. And there was a far more equitable distribution of resources. And far more people were able to learn how to read and write. And they could rise in the bureaucracy that was created around the country. So we had this great period of resilience and this great Renaissance period because of the rise of the middle class. What's going to happen now in America? What's going to happen around the world? We're having conversations around universal basic income and just how important that is. Take the money away from the billionaires, redistribute it. These are the lessons that the past has to share with us. That's why I'm so hopeful about our future, because I'm so deeply rooted in our past, and our past shows us just how resilient we are. And ultimately, that's the gift I want to give all of you, to be able to participate and understand our extraordinary creativity, our extraordinary diversity. And ultimately, I'm hoping it gives you so much hope for our own future. So I thank you all so much for this amazing opportunity to speak to you. I'm so deeply honored by this incredible award. I will cherish it for my life. I will like I did when I was 20 years old in the basement of the Yale Peabody Museum. I want to take the lessons of Roy Chapman Andrews and his passion for communicating to the public, and really to kind of take that seriously and think, how can I be a better public science communicator? How can I continue to give back and help inspire the next generation of Roy Chapman Andrews honorees? So thank you so much. And I think that being said, I will leave it open for questions. Thank you again.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Parcak. I personally really enjoyed that. And I think for those of you in the audience tonight who have studied Roy Chapman Andrews, that, what was unique about Roy Chapman Andrews was he had a passion for his fieldwork, and that in sharing his passion, he inspired the imagination of the entire nation. And I think the Roy Chapman Andrews Society Board of Directors couldn't have chosen a better person to give this award to this year, because you just exemplify so much what Roy Chapman Andrews was all about. So thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. I really enjoyed that, and it really sparked my imagination as well. I really enjoyed, especially the part about the ball, and I just imagined somebody leaving that as an offering. So it was very inspiring to me. So thank you very much. And we're now at the point of the evening where, first of all, I'd like to again thank all of our sponsors, especially ABC Supply, Angus Young, Architects, Engineers, State Line Community Foundation, for being Discovery sponsors. And in this COVID environment where we have limited opportunities to fundraise, it is more important than ever that those who believe in the mission of this organization show that support through being members. You can become a member through our website, and if you do it very quickly, you can get an access code to join us in a meet and greet question and answer period that immediately follows this event. For those of you who are already members and our sponsors, you were sent a registration code earlier before this meeting. We are going to sign off from this meeting here shortly. And if you will follow that link, that Zoom link, we will be reconvening here in about 5 minutes. And so, again, now's your chance to become a member. It just takes a minute, and we will have we'll be monitoring those that join late, so we can get you that code. And with that, I'll sign off this event, and we're going to transition over to our question and answer session.
Great.
So we'll see you shortly, Dr. Parcak.